What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit a million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Hello there. How's it going, guys? John Hendricks here alongside Ross Jackson coming at you for another episode of Second and Saint. Day 3 of Saints training camp coming at you. I mean, 3 days in already.
3 days in already. This went
really,
so fast.
It's crazy. Nuts, man. But as always, Ross, my man, how's things going?
Wonderful. Wonderful. I am so happy that we are back to doing training camp and everything and like being here for all of this. It's just so nice to be able to kind of every day see this team and be able to kind of say, hey, here's how things are going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And be able to kind of give that type of reflection. So it's been great to be a part of all this. And I'm glad that we've been out here to be able to cover it every step of the way and then make it available to all of you so that hopefully you feel like you've been here too, which is always our goal. How about you?
For sure, man. Yeah, if you haven't checked it out, go to Locked On. Ross tackles everything every day talking about the Saints. And, of course, all my notes and observations, if you can sit there and read, I advise you to make a cup of coffee, all that fun stuff, because it's like over 2,000 words. I don't know how, but it's like as much detail as you can get for it.
Dude, you just try. You like sit down and then you just, because I get to watch John do this, and he just like sits down, he's got his notepad, and then he just starts typing, and then he literally vanishes for like an hour and then comes out with 2,000 words. It's incredible. It's the most amazing thing.
It happens, man. It's just a lot of stuff. And again, we only see an hour and a half right now at this point. And so it's just, there's so much information to pay attention to. And the thing is, it's like, you know, you have the height of training camp practices, there's team drills and sevens or when they do one-on-ones, but we pay attention to the little stuff, like when they're doing position drills, when they're doing special teams drills, like all of that matters.
Yeah.
Because like we said on special teams, if it's not a problem until it's a problem, right? You know,
so and then it's like, a big problem.
And then of course, this is how people make the roster of special teams and all these other things. And so, it's a lot to pay attention to. 3 days in, we got one more day tomorrow, and then we get a small little break, and then they're back at it, pads coming up and stuff. But I think for today, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. It's Marshon Lattimore.
Right.
He's left practice with a hip flexor. Now, starting practice, he was kind of doing some drills by himself. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, he was there for individual drills and he was there for positional drills. And he did start 7-on-7s, but he did leave with a hip flexor. That's a concern. Yeah. And we know we talked about the injury bug yesterday and just some of the conditioning and some of the other things that have happened. But hip flexor is a tough one. That could be something that maybe is a week. That could be something that could be several weeks. Yeah. And so that depends on the severity. But Dennis Allen said a little bit of a hip flexor. That's the only thing I could say that may be comforting in that is he called it a little bit of a hip flexor. And so we're going to find out. But Marshon Lattimore getting hurt throughout the course of camp, not a good thing. But in the same breath, Kool-Aid McKinstry gave him an opportunity because the Saints operated a nickel today to come in. Your thoughts on Marshon?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I look at in all of this is just it's the whole story of the offseason, right? Like all the conversation about potentially trading him away, all the conversation about the friction that existed between him and the organization, working through all that, getting all those things kind of out of the way in order to get him back into the building. And then all the buy-in that he brought, right? Because he came in with the buy-in, working with these other players, kind of working on his own, showing up in shape, ready to go and everything, like full participation the moment that he was in the building, all those things. So then to clear all of those hurdles and then get 3 days into training camp and then have this pop up, which is really the first time that we've heard of Marshon Lattimore in the recent past, at least, having an injury that wasn't an impact something, right?
Right. Yeah.
Him coming down. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Him coming down, trying to make a play on a deep ball against the Seattle Seahawks in the end zone, and then puncturing or lacerating a kidney, right? Having somebody roll up on his ankle. Like those were things that weren't necessarily within his control.
Right.
And this, I don't think any injury is within anybody's control. I get hurt all the time. If I didn't want to, I wouldn't, but I do. And so like it happens. But this is the first time we've really seen something that wasn't an impact injury or something like that is kind of a working up. And so I wonder, he's been around this organization long enough that he knows that, hey, the Saints play this stuff really, really cautiously.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if it was just hearing the phrase a little bit of a hip flexor. I wonder how much of it was like, hey, this is kind of bothering me. And then it was like, I'm going to go. You know what I mean? Because he walked off with a trainer, and everything. He didn't walk off on his own, but he walked off under his own power.
Sure,
didn't have to be like helped off or anything like that. But he grabbed a trainer, talked to him for a little while, and then left with the trainer. And so I think that's got to be maybe the biggest thing. But I thought that the other thing that really came from this is how the Saints then approached the cornerback position outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, you could have said, maybe we'll put Kool-Aid out there,
right?
Or we could have just moved Alante out there and put Kool-Aid in the slot. But I think that's a pretty good nod to this is our plan, is we want Alante in the slot. So I think that's good for him. And with Marshon, what come to mind on that was Juwan Johnson. The fact that he felt some discomfort, and then it's like, okay, let's figure out what's wrong. Let's make sure that we address that and such. And so I'm not saying Marshon's going to need surgery or anything. More information is going to be gathered on that. And, it could be a minor thing. It could be a bigger thing. But at this point, it's disappointing, obviously. But let's hold off, hit the panic button for sure now. Let's hold off from doing that. But again, seeing Kool-Aid get the benefit of the doubt and putting out there, who, again, we looked at yesterday and thought he looked really good today. Or yesterday and today he's thrust in there to start with Alante in the slot. I think that's a good sign for him, is the fact that now he's going to get those reps.
Yeah.
Opposite. Like, you have to go from not really being active and in the plans to, okay, we're going to get you some drills. And now you're getting up to speed. Now we're going to just throw you into the fire. And I think he can handle it.
I do too. And this is what's going to happen at some point during his rookie season anyway. So you might as well get used to it, right? Because you're not going to have, you're not going to have all three of your starting corners all 17 games. No. He's going to get thrown into the real fire, which is where where his actions could potentially impact the win or loss column.
Sure.
So here you go. Here's an opportunity here. So while they figure out what's going on with Marshon Lattimore, and certainly while we hope that everything is okay when it comes to all that, this gives Kool-Aid McKinstry a little bit of an opportunity to see what it's like to be thrown into a fire, not the fire, but a fire.
Yes.
And in how he responds to it. And it also allows the organization, the coaches, DA, everybody, to be able to look back and go, okay, here's how he handled that. Here's how he managed that. And maybe that'll be a good question for DA tomorrow, is after there's been 2 days of Kool-Aid in there, because I can't imagine that Marshon Lattimore is going to be on the field on Saturday. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's just hard to see it right now.
Yeah, right? Because you never really know with these hip flexor things,
it's
like you said.
So it's like, we're going to be cautious here. You know what I mean?
And Sunday's off already. Mm-hmm. So if you can give him 2 days off but have him only miss one practice, do it.
Yep.
He knows the system. He's fine. Ain't nothing for him to learn here, and it's so I think you can be realistic about it. You can keep him out for Saturday and let Kool-Aid go out there and do this again. And then maybe we come back around and we ask DA, hey, how do you feel like Kool-Aid kind of managed or met this opportunity?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, it's a little bit more added pressure. Mickey was out there today, and team president Dennis Losher was out there. I mean, there's a lot of eyeballs on you for sure. Yeah. And there was a little bit more family and friends that were there in practice today, like the Carr family was there. Or I saw Lucas Patrick, his family had a really cool moment where he got to kiss his little baby girl and stuff. Like, it was really nice to see and stuff. I'm a sap for stuff like that. But again, for Kool-Aid, it is an opportunity. And already he was kind of the starting outside corner or secondary corner with Alante on the outside. Right. And so, again, you look at the slot, and even going further, because the Saints showed the nickel look today, like Ugo Amadi, who we knew was going to get some looks there. He was there. Kool-Aid got some work in the slot as well. But this is a thing for the Saints in the defense, and throughout the course of training camp, the bumps, the bruises, the things, this, that, they're going to happen. We've seen it already. Yep. And you talked about some of these injuries, whether it's a result of conditioning, and most of those were like team related and contact and stuff. And this one, it seems like a little bit more cautious because we just don't know all the information just yet, but we'll do our best to find out, obviously. And him not being on the field in any capacity tomorrow will be a little bit telling, but I don't think they're in a rush to put him back on the field, like you said.
Yeah, no, I would be more concerned if they put him back out on the field tomorrow than I would be if he missed, if I'm being honest, because then I'd be worried about watching him to make sure, hey, how's he looking? How's he feeling? Does he make it worse? Does it come back? Like whatever it might be. I just don't think there's any need to risk that when you have another day off on the way. And if you can get him back for pads, get him back for pads and then let it kind of be what it is. I thought it was interesting though. And I thought, we kind of talked about like the vote of confidence to Kool-Aid McKinstry of having him go out there and be that guy over on the outside. But I thought similarly, it was also a vote of confidence towards Alontae Taylor, that even though in the first year he had a lot of ups, a lot of downs in the slot, that they still kept him there and said, hey, you're going into your second year, you're getting more experience here, you stay here and everything like that. And then it wasn't until, there were some times where they kind of shifted around and things like that. But for the most part, like Kool-Aid kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Kool-Aid kind of got more outside and where it looks in the first team, and then more slot looks in the second team. And then so you can kind of see a little bit of both kind of happening, but I thought it was a good vote of confidence towards Alontae Taylor too, that like, hey, we want to continue to develop your skills here on the inside. And then when they went to base, he bounced right back on the outside, got to do what it is that he does. But I thought that was a nice kind of gesture towards Alontae Taylor and vote of confidence in his direction too.
And I mean, we've talked about it with Joe Woods saying that he didn't really do him any favors in the slot. And there's so many difference and nuances, like with what you do when you run integrity and with your coverage assignments. And so for Alontae, I know he wants to play. I know he wants to start. I know he wants to. Starting outside, it would be ideal, but you got Paulson. Maybe that's a possibility next year, depending on what happens with Lattimore and Adebo's contract and stuff. But at the same time, it is a vote of confidence. And he, again, I've always said this too. What I appreciate most about Alontae is if he does get beat on a rep, he comes back and he's able to do something right after that. You know what I mean? So it's like short-term memory. And look, today, one of the team drill plays that, Derek Carr had to throw that pass to Olave perfectly because Alontae was like almost picture perfect coverage there. And so it had to be right there. And I don't know how that was complete, but somehow it did.
and I thought that like that pass too. So this was a snap during team drills down the left sideline where Derek kind of put it on Chris Olave's like back shoulder almost, where Olave had to work his way around, go up and leap. I think Chris Olave's development as a contested catch receiver is notable. Yeah. I don't think he's going to ever be like one of the big contested catch guys in the NFL or anything like that. Like he might never be that guy or that, but I think that's okay because he comes down with these more times than you would expect him to with his quote unquote frame, right? Typically when you think about the contested catch guy, you're thinking like 6'3", 6'4", 215, 220 pounds, like big prototypical X receiver. This is a fast dude and he's built like a fast dude, everything, but he has this uncanny ability to go up there and still make these contested catch plays. He did it in college too. So it's not entirely new. Yeah, it's not unfamiliar. Yeah, but it's great to see at this next level, I think is the big thing. And so when you're playing against like this, next level talent and whatever, faster, more physical talent, however it is that you want to look at it, I think it's another element to his game that I think allows him to maybe be a little bit more of that reliable number one option in the passing game.
Yeah, he said this offseason he wants to go from being good to elite, you know what I mean? And so this is how you kind of prove it. And the chemistry with Carr. And again, you check back on past shows. We've talked about this, this trajectory ever since OTAs and minicamp that they're working on their chemistry and that, Derek Carr is making new points to say, okay, that was a bad ball on my part and stuff. And then the nuances with this offense that even if they feel like they did it perfectly, Clint Kubiak kind of has the final say. It's like, nope, I wanted you to do it this way. And so I think Olave has a big opportunity. And we keep seeing him, make those catches during camp. We're going to keep seeing those, right? And what was cool about the catch that he made was, afterwards, he felt a little bit of a certain way. Like him and Jonathan Abram had a little bit of some words and like, this was a little bit more of a spirited practice. I don't say it was chippy, but I'd say it's more spirited than I think I've seen, just because, you know, you got the offense trying to outsmart the defense. The defense, man, they are just like, they're just pit bulls at this point. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they make a play, you're going to hear about it from like here to Texas. You know what I'm saying? And so it's good to see Olave continue to make those types of plays. But again, not to take away from that, but Carr's placement on that throw was really good. And he had a good day too.
This was his best day.
Yeah.
I know it's only 3 days in, but it was his best day.
But you know, you look at it, it wasn't just him. You know, he had some good completions to Cedric Wilson.
Yeah. Another perfectly placed pass.
Yeah. Somebody that came into the frame, you know, today kind of was a little bit quiet on this early on process, but seeing him getting involved is a good thing. And again, you're seeing other players start to make plays, but this is the point now where this offense, no matter who's been playing quarterback, they made more plays today than we've seen on the first 2 days combined. Yeah,
completely agree. This was the passing game open back up. They've established their sort of groundwork with the running game, opened things up over in the passing game, and it benefited big time. I think, you know, looking at Cedric Wilson and that catch that he had, the thing about this catch is that Kool-Aid McKinstry was draped all over Cedric Wilson on this play. I believe this was out of this. This was one of the slot reps. But in any case, he was all over Cedric Wilson. Cedric Wilson had to go almost entirely horizontal to make the catch, right? He gets down, he makes the catch on a perfectly placed pass that only Cedric Wilson, you know, we used to talk about this all the time with Drew Brees. Oh, he put it where only the wide receiver could catch it. And that's what we saw on this play big time. And then Cedric Wilson not only made the catch, but survived the ground in the process and ended up coming down with it. So I think it was just one of those days to where, like, we've seen a lot of the defense be the defense over the course of the first 2 days. We saw 2 interceptions early on and 7-on-7s, and it looked like, oh, okay, well, it's going to be another defensive day, but it felt like the offense kind of really fought back in a big way.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I think there were some plays that, like, Jake Haener had some good throws, Spencer Rattler had some good throws. I mean, it was spread out, right? It wasn't just Derek Carr, you know, leading the first team offense. I like what I saw from Jake Haener and what he was able to do with the second team, you know, and the same thing with Rattler had some moments, but, you know, they also had their opportunities too, you know, and of course, before we kind of get to some of that, let's just talk about Jake Haener, because he had obviously a big deal to talk about today, that he was wearing a bandage on his face. And so he actually has a rare form of skin cancer on his face that, from my understanding, was discovered when he was in France this not too long ago, but about a week and a half before training camp started, and they got it checked out. They took it out, biopsied, and it's some type of cancer. It's not life-threatening, obviously, which is good news, but it is something that's going to have to be dealt with. And so from my understanding, again, he said August 1st is when they're going to know more, but they're trying to hold off until the end of preseason to get it taken care of, and then they're going to make the adjustments. But there's going to be a period where, like, he can't have any contact. He'll probably be away from the team for a little bit. But, you know, they're trying to keep this close to the vest. But that is some more intel on what Haener's injury and what he's kind of dealing with. But you know, that's never ideal. But dude's a trooper, man. I'll tell you. Oh,
absolutely. Still out here balling. Like, you go out there getting it done, out there working and everything. And the thing that could be a little bit scary about this too is that with some forms of skin cancer, which we don't know if this is the specific type that Jake Haener has, but it does make you susceptible to other forms of skin cancer as well. It kind of boosts the, I guess, likelihood that those things can kind of set into place. And so there's a real reason to have a sense of urgency about this in terms of trying to get as many answers as possible for him, his family, everything, in terms of making sure that they're, you know, going about this the right way and the way that is most sensible for him. But I'm going to be surprised if he's not out there grinding, man, because that just seems to be who he is, like, no matter what. And it's like, he's like, as long as this ain't life threatening, I'm out here. I'm getting this done, you know, and I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Yeah. And everybody knows that picture that emerged last year and stuff. That's the picture of Jake Haener with his, like,
that's right,
little swab, whatever. I don't even know what you want to call it, but it was
the boy band, ones.
Yeah. So for him to do that, but you know, that was a thing. And then as far as other attendance notes go, you know, no big changes. We knew that we weren't going to see Trajan Jeffcoat. We gave the update on him yesterday. Justin Herron, still not seeing him. Is a knee. We don't know if it's what the severity of it is. But with him missing another couple of days, now seems like it might be a small little thing, if anything. So, and then Shane Lemieux left practice late with an ankle injury. Did see Tano today. He's kind of doing this, like walking around the field before practice.
Weighted vest on.
Yeah, weighted vest on. He's not, like I said, anytime ready, but he's just getting agile and all that other stuff. And then Juwan Johnson made like a brief appearance at first, and then at the end of practice, after practice, when doing interviews, he was actually catching some passes. It wasn't anything crazy, just kind of like light work. No quarterbacks were throwing to him or anything, but it's a good sign to at least see him on the football field, getting back towards that progress, hopefully get back to the field sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Outside of that, we didn't see, outside of the Marshon Lattimore situation, it seemed like they kind of came out unscathed today, which I think was a big thing for them. We've seen a pair of injuries the first 2 days, each the first 2 days. So, see that kind of throttle down, I think would be good for them. I think they'd love to walk out of Saturday's practice with no concerns or no additional concerns. So definitely something to watch out for as they get acclimated, get through conditioning, all these other things, especially before the pads go on Monday.
Yeah. And of course, we'll be paying attention to that closely tomorrow for day 4. But looking at day 3, some of the standouts. So we talked about kind of big connection with Carr. Let's start with the high notes for the defense first. Yep. So 2 picks today. One was Spencer Rattler got picked off by Jordan Howden. And then you also had Rezjon Wright pick off Nathan Peterman. So now all Saints quarterbacks, regardless of whether it was their fault or not, have thrown a pick, right? And so the play with Rattler, I think it was a great defensive play. And of course, the one with Rezjon Wright involved was clear miscommunication between Peterman, Bub Means, and Donald Holker. Like that one was just as easy it comes. But talk about the pick first by Jordan Howden, what you saw on that play. Yeah,
so on that one, that one was really interesting because this is another one of those tip drill interceptions. And we've seen a lot of these for this defense. So if a ball goes up, like it's tipped up in the air, the defense is not letting it get to the ground. And Jordan Howden, by the way, got first team reps today next to Tyrann Mathieu, as did Will Harris rotating in at one point. Then you also saw Jonathan Abram get his usual things. Dennis Allen kind of saying that, look, as players get more solidified, that then they start to get looks at other players and different things. So that might be indicative of that. But it was a pass that got tipped up kind of in the, I would call it maybe like left seam on a bit of a comeback. Got tipped up. I believe it was Shamar Jean Charles that tipped it up. And then Howden was able to grab the interception, wrap around to the left side, get a nice return on it as well. And this is that is the bread and butter of Jordan Howden. He was asked to play a lot in the box last year. He'll continue to get those opportunities this year, but him as a deep cover safety that's able to clean up some of those opportunities in center field, that's what he did with the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And so it was great to kind of see him in his natural element, right? Natural position almost as a safety, being able to make those types of plays.
Yeah, and you've talked about the tip passes because we know about Joe Woods, but Marcus Robertson, for those who don't know, he used to play safety for the Houston Oilers back in the 90s. You talk about like Bubba McDowell, guys like Chris Dishman, all those guys. That's my era of football for sure, like late 80s, early 90s. But this guy came in here and said the emphasis was on to how many interceptions they still left off on the board, right? And so for them to be able to get more of these passes picked off from tips, I mean, it's a sign of good coaching, right? I mean, you're seeing the fruits of that come through. And so I think it's a testament. And you've talked to Rob a lot. And so maybe just share some of that insight about what he's helping the DBs focus on there.
Yeah, let's go back to OTAs for a second. And there was a moment in OTAs to where like the drill was 2 safeties, one of which would have the ball thrown in his direction. He would tip it up, and then another safety would go to make sure that ball did not hit the ground. And that was the exercise. That was the drill. And it just worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And then when we spoke to Marcus Robertson during, it was either OTAs or mandatory minicamp, so I can't remember which one. But at one point, Kat and a few of us had all requested them. And so when you're covering camps, every now and then you get the opportunity to request assistant coaches to be able to talk to them and things like that. And so a few of us had requested to talk to Coach Robertson. And one of the questions that I asked was, hey, working on those tip drills and things like that, like what's the what's kind of the emphasis there. And that's exactly what he talked about, was like, this is a defensive staff that sits down and goes through every single rep of every player in the offseason and cuts together all the missed opportunities, whether it's a missed interception, a missed tackle, a missed opportunity to punch a ball out because they tackled a ball carrier that was carrying the ball loosely, or whatever it might be. And they cut all of these different things together, and then they watch over it with the player and kind of go over and say, hey, next time let's work on doing this. Here's a thing that you did that was a pattern, that you missed this opportunity, this opportunity, this opportunity. It's all a focus on how to get better. And one of the things that they saw was some of these opportunities where the ball got tipped up, but then no one was around to make the play. And how do you address that? And so that was a big part of what they did, what they focused on. I believe it was during OTAs, because it was before Marshon Lattimore had reported, because that was a part of our line of questioning with them. And so you do that. And what that does is that it teaches you two things, right? It's not just the exchange between the tip and then seeing where the ball is going and then making the catch. It's how do you get yourself in position so that if that ball gets up, you're there to potentially make a play. And so it's almost like this, we talk about ball carriers and swarming ball carriers. It doesn't always have to just be once that player has caught the football, everybody swarms around him. But can you go and get yourself in position before the ball even makes it there without interference or anything like that? But can you be over the top, waiting just in case something gets popped up and looking for that, right? It's just as much a mentality and a thought process as it is actually the physical capability of being able to pull the play off.
Yeah, and I like the fact you talk about positioning, because that's one of the things I looked at on the defense. Not that we're just like going all over the place, but that was a drill that they were working on, is the fact of positioning, and specifically like a quarterback rolls out, who's got the running back, who's got the tight end, whose assignment is this person. It's just, it seems like fundamentals. It seems like what you would expect, but the fact of repetitive, drill that's going to stick in the mind of somebody, and lo and behold, that's something they have to guard against more. That like they didn't have to worry about that in the old offense, right? Yeah. Like now this is something you legit have to worry about. And so with M-Rob putting a focus on it, and now we're 3 days into training camp, we got 5 picks for the Saints defense. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't ever remember them starting this hot. Right. You know what I mean? And it doesn't, that's like I said, it doesn't matter who did it or if it was on this person or that person. It's still a pick. Turnover is a turnover. Right. Everybody knows that. And so you take it doesn't matter how it comes, you're going to take a turnover. But that was one. And then the other play was Nathan Peterman. It was Bub Means. I don't know if he didn't run the right route, or if it was intended that Dallin Holker was supposed to run the right route or a different route or something, but it just goes straight to Rezjon Wright, who's wide open, and he's able to take it to the house.
Yeah, I had a vantage point to where I was kind of behind and off to the sideline of where the play happened. And what it looked like from my angle is that you had Bub Means was running a 9 route or a fly, a go route. And then Dallin Holker was running kind of this out route, or at least was running parallel or perpendicular to the sideline. That combination is typically called a dagger route. It literally looks like a dagger if you were to draw it out. And so I thought maybe what it looked like to me was that Peterman was expecting a different landmark for Means that happened to be where Dallin Holker was running his coverage into. And then it looked like Wright had the wherewithal then to peel off of his coverage and go up and get the football. So this is another one of those things about being in the right position, right? Don't just watch it sail over your head because you know your guy's not going to catch it. Can you get to it? And that's what Rezjon Wright went and did. And that's what I thought was such a good moment for him, and a good quality and trait of his to show, because he had to leap for it. He had to work to go and get that. He had to accelerate to go and get it. But I liked seeing him either, because it was one of two things. It was either that, or it was simply that he beat Dallin Holker to the spot. Yeah. And in either case, that's good on Wright.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a guy that, although it was allowed to play out, there was a play later where, there's a big connection to Rashid Shaheed. He goes to the ground. I think the play was over, but he still ended up punching it out, and Jonathan Abram gets the fumble, and, they let it play out and stuff. Right. And of course, you ask the defense, it's a turnover. You ask the offense, well, he was down. He was down. I think he was down, but, just speaking about him, and he's just another one of those guys like a Shamar Jean-Charles who can come in here, learn the defense, adapt to coaching. If they can prove that they can pick up, a little bit more of this defense and just make some of those plays and then get that special teams knowledge, they could be the next Isaac Yiadom. And maybe we have you pick Shamar Jean-Charles for the final roster, but he has just as good of an outlook as Gene Charles if he can make plays like
absolutely. That. And especially too, that came right after. So the play that you referenced came immediately after a play where he finished, kind of not gave up on a play, but he didn't play through the whistle, I guess you'd say, at a rep right before that. The quarterback completed a pass to a receiver that he was guarding. He kind of put his hands on him, kind of two-hand touched it instead of wrapping him up. And then, they're going to keep playing. They're going to keep pushing through. And so the receiver just kept running. And so I wouldn't call it a broken tackle. I think it would have been different in a game situation. He probably would have been able to make the stop and things like that, but he didn't. It felt like he didn't play all the way through that practice rep. And then so the very next play was that play where he played all the way through the practice rep. And Dennis Allen gave him a little bit of side coaching in between those two plays and everything. It was kind of like, hey, here's how we do this and everything. And then that very next play, Rashidi makes what was a great catch, by the way. He had to fight to make that catch, another diving catch over to the right side. I think a similar route to what Cedric Wilson had run earlier. He ends up going down on the ground. And as he's getting up to go and make the play, that's when Wright punched the ball out and everything. So he kept playing through, and it was an immediate adjustment based upon the coaching that he had just gotten. And I think that goes a long way in showing something to your coaching staff. And
you just don't know how things are going to play out. So you do want to play through the whistle.
100%.
Sometimes, 100%. Obviously, if you're engaged in the block, you don't do that. But a play like that, you just don't know in today's NFL. So it's good to see something like that. But then, you look at the offense rebounding. I guess sticking with the defense, because we saw a good bit of standouts today. I think Peyton Turner needs to get some recognition because I think he had a really good day. Anthony Orje is another one. He's made another impact play at least every day that I've seen him. It's just somebody that we keep talking about. Again, one of these guys that spent last year on the practice squad, but Michael Hodges, man, we've told you about him. We've talked about the possibility that this might be his last year because of the way he's able to coach this group. But that's just some of the defensive players. Who's some of the ones that you stood out and maybe talk about Peyton and Anthony too? Yeah,
let's talk. I want to talk about Peyton Turner real quick because this is a guy that has a really, really important year ahead of him. This is the most important season of his future, right? Sure. Max 170 defensive snaps in any season so far. Fifth-year option was not picked up. He's in a contract year. Yeah. And every conversation that we always have about Peyton Turner goes the same way. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. He's got a lot of talent. He just needs to be able to stay on the field. And that's always been the big thing. And so I don't know that talent's really the question. So when he stands out, it's good to highlight. It's good to talk about, but it doesn't feel surprising because he's a talented player. Yeah. He's a really, really talented player. He's just got to be able to stay on the field. And we talked yesterday about how, like, if a guy like Peyton Turner helps Cameron Jordan not be on the field for 6 snaps in the first half, that means that Cameron Jordan is 6 snaps fresher in the fourth quarter when you need him most. Correct. Everything in a close game and those types of things. So there's a ripple effect to a guy like that, Peyton Turner, a guy like Isaiah Foskey as well, coming along and everything and being able to stay out on the field. And so last year during training camp, we saw flashes, and then we started to see model consistency from him towards the end of training camp. And then unfortunately, he had the injury and stuff like that. So I hope we see the same thing again this year. Terry, we see the flashes. We start to pick up the model consistency. And then the only thing he's got to do after that is stay on the field. Yeah, and everything. And
literally stay on the field, stay available.
And if he can do that, and listen, when I say all he has to do is stay on the field, it's not because the expectations are so low. It's just that if he stays on the field, he'll have an impact. I don't know that he's ever going to be able to live up to first round pick status. I don't think I don't know that that's going to happen. Right. Because it's always for that. Right? Yeah, exactly. There's already 3 years, right? There's already too long of a gap. But can he have an impact? Absolutely. And all he's got to do to have that impact is stay on the field because he's got the talent to do it.
Yeah, and you saw it late in the season. You saw when he came in. Again, we point out the sub rush that he's a factor. And again, with no Tano, this is his opportunity now. Like, you can be the new Tano in this sub rush. You can definitely make a mark. And we see Willie Gay Jr. Like, now we know we're getting a better idea of what the sub rush could look like. And of course, long ways away, but for Peyton Turner to put together a good practice is promising. It's good. And we talked about Isaiah Foskey yesterday, and he made a couple of plays again today. And so this is what you want to see is some of these guys. And again, it's if they were disappearing, that would be one thing. And of course, this is before pads. So now we want to see, is it going to translate and stay the same when we do get the pads on, because you're going to have more contact, you're going to have more bumps, bruises, and it's going to be, big boy football when the pads come on. You might be able to get easier to a quarterback, now, but when it comes down to it, this lineman is going to be able to engage you and put his hands on you, all that other stuff. And so for Foskey and Peyton Turner, we know what's at stake for them. They have to come in here. They have to produce. But Turner, just like what Marcus Davenport's going through, he's having to take these 1-year deals. And I don't know why the Vikings paid him $13 million last year. But, for Peyton Turner, that's probably – look, if he can't put it together and stay healthy. But I know he wants it. I know he has the potential. You just got to be available. And like I think I said this, I don't know how many shows ago, maybe when we did the preview, but if he can just be like 75 to 80% of the snaps or 75% of the games this year, I'd be okay with that. Yeah. Except, missing a couple here and there. But if you can be, 3/4 of the season, I kind of count that as a win, but obviously he needs to be as many as he can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. The other guy that I thought stood out, and we've referenced him already a couple of times over the defensive side, was Isaiah Foskey too. There was one rep that I'm sure we'll talk about for that on the other side. It was the player that was blocking him that stood out. But
recognition for sure.
Right. But I think Foskey has shown up quite a few times as a pass rusher and also as a run stopper. It feels like he's just seeing the field differently now.
Totally.
If that makes sense. Last year, there was a lot of was he in the right spot? Was he not in the right position kind of stuff? This year, it feels like he's really kind of seeing it the way he needs to see it. And it's all happening in time for him to be able to get into position, particularly in the run game. And I think that that's been big because remember, one of the big reasons why they felt like they drafted him was because of the fact that he could help with defending some of the outside runs and help with, of course, the mobile quarterback as well, because of the speed that he had, because of the athleticism that he had, and his quickness, right? That short area quickness, ability to change direction, all these other things. But you can change direction all you want. If you don't know what direction you need to be going, it doesn't make too much of a difference. And so I don't think that that's an issue for him at this point. It just feels like he's seeing the field differently. And I'd even say, too, that his pass rush plan feels a little bit more developed. And I think that makes sense because of some of the people that he's been working with over the course of this offseason.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he went into the school, the same coach that coached Aaron Donald. That's where he went and made sure he had a point in this offseason. And so I don't know that his pass rush set is ever going to be like top tier at this point, but at this point, just make position plays or make plays from your position. That's what you need to do. Be available, stay on the field, don't overthink it. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing now is that you're early on, and again, 3 days of 22 practices, right? I mean, and you got 3 preseason games and you got joint practices. So again, you don't want to pop the champagne just yet, but it is encouraging. It is good to see some of these guys step up to the table. You talked about Foskey, you talked about Turner. I'm trying to think other ones. Nathan Shepard is another guy that stood out again today. His run defense, I'm telling you, him and Colin Saunders, we talked about on this show, is that it's not just the second-year players that are going into the system, like the rookies. It's the second-year players who just signed with the team last year. It's going to be big for the success for this team. But I'm telling you, some of these guys on the interior, and when they get Chase Young in, and I'm telling you, I was watching some of his reps, and he's getting more and more involved and acclimated. His bend, his strength, his everything, the possibilities and potential are there. And I know he wants it, but, it could make this front four a little bit better than maybe what we thought. But, of course, we got a long ways to go for that.
Long ways to go. But I do think that he adds an element that no one else can provide on that defensive line. And I think that alone is of very, very important benefit to this defensive line. They lost Zach Bond this offseason, who kind of gave him a little bit of that speed rush, gave him that speed rush option off the edge. Chase Young gives you that. You mentioned Willie Gay kind of helping with the supplemental second level pass rush coming from that. The New Orleans Saints have been one of the best, I think it's top 2 second level pass rushing teams since over the course of the past couple of years. And even with a guy like Demario Davis, who has been playing so deep into his career, set and then tied his career high in sacks over the course of the past 2 years. this is what they've been doing and everything. And so when you add a guy like Willie Gay that can help you there, when you have a guy like Chase Young who you can stand up on the edge, but then also move inside or line up on the edge, in a 3-point stance, and he can bend, but also he can stunt inside and then take on a guard. We've already seen him doing a little bit of that. I think that those things, like, there's just so much that a guy like that adds to your pass rush that it's hard not to see the benefit of that. We don't know how that benefit's going to translate into production for the entire defensive line, but it's clear that the benefit is there.
Yeah, and the Saints were still, like, again, if you ever play fantasy, they were a top 10 fantasy defense last year, which I know might not seem like mean much to some people, but we saw the turnovers go up.
Yeah.
And we saw them have, top 10 pass defense, and the run defense needs work, 21st in the league. And so the sacks have to go up. And I think it's like cohesion. And I've always been, I got into some, I don't want to say arguments, debates, because there's a belief where if you have a better secondary, it helps out your front four. And I think my argument is if your front four can get after the quarterback better and more efficient, it makes your secondary's job a lot easier too.
And it's really a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, it's definitely symbiotic's the right word for sure. And so if they can get a better product on the front four, which I think they can, then it's going to make that defense be a lot more consistent. I think that's the first thing. And in B, it's going to make them get more of the turnovers, get more of the sacks, finish the plays. And so I think it's not even just about the opposition taking the checkdowns, which we've seen the offense take a ton of checkdowns because the stuff's not there. We saw some plays today where the coverage is there. The quarterbacks are having to scramble out of the pocket and try to find somebody open. So that's usually a good sign of coverage too.
Yeah. And those checkdowns sometimes are akin to what we discussed yesterday about the rules, right? If somebody comes off hot off the edge, check it down and get 4 yards.
Right.
Check it down and get 5 yards, especially if it's a 2nd and 7 situation or a 1st and 10 or a 2nd and 10 situation. Get what you can. And so in some of those cases, it's that, one player is blitzing from one spot and the rule says go to the check down and everything. And it might just be that simple, right? It's where it's not, I'm not even going to see what else is developing out there. I'm getting this ball out quickly, right? Because otherwise I risk a sack as a quarterback. And so I think that like those pieces are going to be things to kind of track as we watch the Saints offense and how they operate, the decisions that they make, how they react, all those other things. You mentioned consistency. I'll say one other player that stood out to me on defense, and I think he stood out to us on the very first team rep, and it was Pete Werner. Again,
yeah, of course,
for another day. Just like the two coaches that I hear during team reps more than any other coaches during team reps, right? Special teams, it's all Rizzy all the time. But when it comes to the team reps, it's Keith Williams on offense and it's Mike Hodges on defense. Yeah. It's Michael Hodges on defense all the time. And when Pete makes a play, because Coach Hodges is yelling, "Way to go, Petey, Petey," and everything, and he's just cheering him on, and I love it, and it's so dope because it sets the tone, right? Mm-hmm. And then what does Pete Werner do? But turn around and he flexes on everybody, right? And then Anthony Orchie, who you mentioned earlier, he makes a play, and then you hear, "Way to go, 5'8", way to go, 5'8", and what does Orchie do? He turns around and he flexes on everybody, it just like. The energy, it just bounces and bounces and bounces and bounces, and it's awesome to see. And that second level is leading so much of that this training camp. Typically, we see this from the defensive line, we see it from the secondary, but I feel like this second level, these linebackers, they've really been kind of leading the energy of this team, particularly over on the defensive side so far through training camp.
Well, I agree. I mean, Demario Davis is the energy, right? And you get Willie Gay Jr. in there, he's energy times 100, right? Yeah. And then you add to that room, Khalid Hudson. You got obviously Werner still there, and then Jalen Ford, guys like DeMarco Jackson making calls on defense, and it's Monty Rice too. He making some things happen, but all of the guys, even Isaiah Stallbird today, he had a nice little play, a couple plays too. So it's just that room with Michael Hodges coaching it. I know they turned a corner when they brought Mike Nolan in. When they brought him in for sure, and it wasn't as strong as it could be. But when they brought Hodges in, and the fact that they got exponentially better, like I said this the other day, I don't care who they roll out there. I preferably Demario, and Willie Gay Jr. But I feel good about what that unit is able to bring to the table. I just do. And so for them to lead the charge and their energy and what's crazy is the practices, DeMario's there. He's watching. He's usually off by himself, just on the sideline, watching everything. He's trying to coach up, the younger guys, saying what he needs to do, but he's getting in there still and telling them, giving them an attaboy or just saying, this is what you need to look for and stuff. And so Hodges is one guy, but DeMario is another one.
It's true.
You don't want to let him down.
Yeah. That same play that we talked about where I think it was Rezan who got that coaching off to the side from DA right before Dennis Allen went and talked to him. DeMario went and talked to him and kind of was like, hey, here's how we do this. Yeah. I imagine. And everything, kind of had that conversation. There was another play to where DeMario didn't like what he saw from the defensive side. So while they're huddling up, trying to get their play in, DeMario goes up to the huddle and starts talking to everybody and everything. And
it's like, are you about to get in here?
Right. So I was ready for him to pull a linebacker out and be like, hold up, let me show you how it's done real quick. But, he just kind of talks to him and everything. And then he goes back off to the sideline. And I'm going to keep bringing it up when we see it, but it's accountability, right?
It is.
It's every person taking responsibility for the success of every person.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of those big things. We saw again, Alontae Taylor off to the side working with, I can't remember which DB it was, but working with one of the DBs during punt return drills and stuff like that, coaching them on jamming and everything. Hey, if you go this way and put your body in this position, it's going to force the gunner to do this. And then you're in a really good spot to be able to just turn and get upfield and all these other things, like helping to kind of make those types of corrections. And we're seeing that over and over again to where these guys that are, 10 plus years in the league, like DeMario, they're over on the side giving all of this coaching and giving all this stuff. And then you've got guys that are, in the league for 3 years that are out here giving all of this stuff and making sure that they're like giving all these coaching and all these corrections too. So everybody's taking responsibility in terms of what could be the success of the entire team. Yeah.
And it started at the end of the year. The end of the year meetings with Mickey and DA kind of addressing the team is like, if you're going to be here, be here.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, that's the gist of it is you're going to need to be dialed in this year. And I think that's the point. And again, it's one thing to say it. It's one thing to do it. And for the Saints, at least we're seeing the behaviors and we're seeing the things that we just haven't seen in camp. Now, could it all just not work? Sure. But again, they're trying something different. They're doing something different. And we're seeing something different out there, whether it's drills, whether it's results. It doesn't matter. We're seeing something different. And hopefully this is the team that shows up. Like, nothing would make me happier because, again, we don't care about the week one, but nothing would make me happier than to march into Dallas and just beat the dog snot out of them. You know what I'm saying? And then be able to show up against Philly the next week because those are two hard opponents. And they're going to be tested, a mobile quarterback. They're going to be tested against Dak Prescott and that run attack. They're going to have a tough front seven to do. Same thing against the Eagles, Jalen Hurts. The Eagles are a strong team. They fell off last year on the wayside, but they played really well at the beginning of the season. So they're facing a pivotal year, but I want to see it. And if I'm a Saints fan, I want to see it during the season. I don't want to just see it in practice. I want to see it in the preseason, which they're going to get their opportunity. You won't be able to catch the Cardinals game, but the 49ers game is nationally televised. Right. The preseason finale against the Titans is going to be an NFL Network. So there's chances to see this team up close too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a good question here from Tedra. It kind of goes to some of the things that we've discussed in like previous shows too, but this idea of like, is the defense elite or is the offense just not good? We always see defenses start off strong when it comes to training camp. We kind of broke this down yesterday. There's so many changes that happen on offenses every single year. Yep. Add this wrinkle, add this thing. We're going to steal this from this team, blah, blah. Defense is typically like the scheme tends to stay kind of consistent. And you see a lot more offensive minds hired away and new offensive minds coming in than you see defensive minds in today's NFL. So I think that's a piece of it. But I do think the defense has performed well. And I think today we saw the offense perform well too. So I wouldn't go so far as to say the offense wasn't good because, again, the defense started off strong, but the offense punched back big time. It kind of had the bigger day, I think, in this particular practice.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I think there was a couple ones. What comes to mind is one was Trevor Penning had this rep on Cam Jordan where he just was perfect textbook.
Oh yeah, the one-on-ones that they were doing, or the drills that they were doing.
Well, it wasn't the drills. This was in team.
They had done it over on the opposite side too. Yeah, they were doing like one-on-one situations.
So that's the thing is
translating it.
Watches the offense and I'm watching defense and then swap after the break and such. But that's good because he sees Trevor Penning putting a good block on Cam Jordan in one-on-ones, and then during a team rep, he just absolutely had the best of him. And it wasn't just that. He had a really good run rep too, where he just had a strong blocks. And so he was one example. Josiah Zerum.
Yeah, that's another standout.
Who you were talking about, or alluded to earlier, with a good block on Isaiah Foskey, the rookie left or right tackle. Kyle Hergel was another one who got an attaboy for some of his blocking today too. And so I don't think it's just the defense is elite and the offense is not good, because the offense has to find themselves. It's a new system. It's all this other stuff, but there were plenty of plays that were had today, whether it was some runs to the second level, or whether it was some blocks, or whether it was some big catches. The offense had a good day for sure.
Yeah. One of the things that I talked about over on Locked On Saints not so long ago that I heard DA kind of echo was this idea that, like, you never want to see one side consistently dominate the other side. You want to see defense win, offense win, defense win a couple, offense win a couple. Yeah. You really want to kind of see these things build, and you really kind of want to see these things, like that competition, consistently drive back and forth. And I think that that's kind of what we're seeing so far. That's what we're seeing more of so far, is that, right? We're seeing a lot more of the, like, here's a little bit of the defense making a play, here's the offense turning around making plays too. And so all of that's being shared. And I think that, like, that's the ideal situation, especially for a defensive head coach. It's so easy to get excited for the defense. Yes. But the thing that's really nice for DA too is that, like, now as being a head coach, he can be excited about anything and everything that happens on the field, which is really, really good. I wanted to quickly get to this question real quick from Rose City because I thought it was a good one, and it's kind of where we are. But talking about, like, the NASCAR package of Cam, Chase, and then getting Granderson all out on the field at the same time, I think Rose question is, how often are we going to see it? I think there's a chance we see it quite a bit, because I'm thinking back to, like, OTAs. I'm thinking back to mini camps and things like that, and hearing NASCAR get shouted out a lot, and everything. And of course, Chase wasn't available during that time. So I'm curious about how much of that more we see once he's full go in these team reps.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what it looks like, it's tough to say, because, I mean, I know they'll roll DeMario up, and we talked about Willie Gay Jr. as an opportunity too. But, you know, I'd assume Granderson is definitely a staple. I don't know where you put Cam on it offhand.
Do you put him on the outside, or do you put him on the inside? Like, how do you roll him?
I mean, interior wise, I think Brian Brzee is who we might think of, but I'm not so sure that if Christian Boyd can't, make waves and sparks, that he could be that guy. You know, it's just going to be fascinating to see. And so I think when you look at that NASCAR package, who they put in, they got a lot to figure out there, right? And I don't know that we'll get that answer anytime soon, but at the same time, it is kind of like some moving parts and pieces. I think they can put together a strong package in itself that will hopefully lead to not almost sacks or just close or anything, but actually finishing the play.
Yeah. You need the finishers. The Pelicans, they just went out and got their finishers, right? They went out and got theirs to DeJounte Murray.
They did, but hopefully that's
right. Do the Chase Youngs. Do the New Orleans Saints now have a finisher in Chase Young? Like, I think that's one of those things that could be just as big of benefit as anything when it comes to Chase Young, is, can he finish the play at the quarterback, when the Saints have typically struggled to do that over the course of the past couple of years. Even in the seasons where they've had 40 plus sacks, they could have had more. Yeah, like you heard Cam talk about that all the time. Oh, Cam had a 3-sack game. Blah, blah. He's like, I should have had 5. Yeah, I should have had 6. Blah, blah, however it is. And, like, obviously that's the standard that your leader is going to hold himself to. But I think that there's some truth behind it too.
Absolutely. All right. So offense, let's go by the notebook, because if there's anybody else you wanted to highlight, I mean, there's so many. Just go on Saints News Network. I put literally the entire flow of practice and every play that's happened, and we just want to kind of hit on some of the high notes. That, I mean, there was just so many, honestly, like, just so many different plays, good individual plays. Everybody flashed, everybody did something, you know what I mean? I think the only real thing that, you got to get Jamal Williams going a little bit more, I think, is another thing that we need to see. But seeing Cedric Wilson Jr., he was a guy that needed today, right? I think he had some big plays. But he was a guy, the big hookup from Haener to Rashid, that was a big play for today. But, there's some of these guys that need to show a little bit more. I think as we get into camp, we're going to see more. But, Cedric Wilson is a prime example. He needed today. He showed up, had some good plays. What about you?
I think one of the other guys that stood out for me today, or really not stood out to me, but I think one of the guys that maybe finally kind of came crashing back down to earth was Nathan Peterman today.
Yeah.
Peterman had the two best passing plays for the first 2 days. And all of a sudden, Derek Carr was like, okay, no, this is my team, my guy. Like, let me reassume where I'm supposed to be here, everything. And look, some of this comes down to how many opportunities they had, what's the level of competition that they're playing against, things like that. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like, Nathan had that one pass that we mentioned to the outside that looked like, whatever, maybe there was miscommunication, whatever, but it led to the interception. And outside of that, he just kind of had, the typical kind of third, fourth quarterback kind of day. Yep. So seeing him kind of come back down, but at the same time, seeing a guy like Derek Carr have as good a day as he had, which should not be understated either, I think was important to me. So seeing that kind of begin to separate. I think we're seeing more of the younger guys kind of, I mentioned yesterday, you're going to start to see the younger guys close the gap. Yeah. With the veterans. There's still a gap big time right now, for sure. But I think you're seeing them get a little bit better. I mean, Kool-Aid, again, consistently in really good coverage. Alante in really good position. Rajon Wright making those plays. Shamar Jean-Charles making those plays. Jordan Howden getting the interception. Like, we're seeing this over and over again now to where we're watching the younger guys come in and be the ones that are making these plays. I'll also say that we finally saw a little bit of change on the offensive line. A little bit of movement there, is particularly at right tackle and left guard. Yeah, which, like we mentioned, could mean that things are solidifying, so they're getting a look at some of the other guys, right? Or you're starting to gather more information about some of the other options. So it could go either way. I think one practice isn't enough to tell us that yet. We'll have to see kind of what the trend becomes. Do we all of a sudden start seeing a guy that was in first team taking second team, taking third team, those types of things, and what does that potentially tell us? So I don't want to overblow that yet, but it is the start now of the time to where we'll start tracking that kind of thing. But Taliesin Fuanga, no movement. Yeah. No movement. He is there.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the like ridiculous observations I had, which means absolutely nothing to anybody except me probably, this guy doesn't wear gloves. Like, I noticed it today, like you see everybody, and I was looking through his college pictures. He might have a couple moments here, but this guy doesn't wear gloves at all. And so I don't know if that's by design but I was looking through some of his pictures. And so, like, the guy is a strong offensive lineman. That Polynesian power is bright.
I was about to say, is that Polynesian power. He needs to feel it.
But again, it's one of those observations that have nothing to do with anything. Maybe it's something, I don't know. But that was just one thing that stood out for me. But, you talked about him. I feel good about where he's coming. I could see him picking up things, right? And, this is our totally untrained, unprofessional, uninformed eye, I guess you could say. But from what we see, it does look like he's coming along. Yeah. Trevor Penning's not without blemish, obviously, but seeing Lucas Patrick getting more looks, and it's not just at left guard, it's at right guard too, just to have cross training, because this is a team that's going to do it. Same thing with Landon Young, right tackle, left tackle, because you just never know if Penning were to get hurt. You could put Fuanga there and put Landon Young at left tackle. Like, you are smart to make sure that you have multiple players at multiple positions who can do multiple things. Yeah. It's just smart football.
Yeah, completely agree. What else over on the offensive side? Oh, the running backs.
I was going to say, I got one for sure. But
yeah. No, go ahead. Go with yours.
Well, the other thing, I don't want to lose your train of thought. No. Penn and the running backs.
Steel trap right here.
The thing about the quarterbacks is, and what I would say is we make so much about the quarterback two battle. So two things that stood out for me is that twice Jake Haener had to get rehuddles, right?
Yes.
I think that's a big thing, is that we've seen that with Spencer Rattler. We've seen that with Jake Haener, but just little things, whether it's not comfortable, people don't know their assignment, but that's just two things that I pick up on. And then, the other part that happened was Rattler had a rep, like, where he fumbled the ball.
Yes.
Lalos was around, Nico Lalos, and then Isaiah Foskey gets the sack. But, that's the thing.
Yeah, that was another Foskey play. That's right.
Yeah, afterwards, saying you got to have that ball security. So it's just like, you don't get a crystal clear, like, even as good of a throwing day as Jake Haener had, it wasn't without blemish. Yep. And even, with that one thing that Spencer Rattler had and then having the pick, he still had some good throws. So Absolutely. It's just no decision has been made on that.
Yeah, everything has to be taken into consideration when it comes to all of this. The note that was shouted out towards Spencer Rattler, by the way, from, I believe it was Dennis Allen, is inside and out, 2 hands on the ball.
Yeah, 2 hands on the ball.
2 hands on the ball. That was the big thing. So if you are in the pocket and you need to run in between anything, right? You got to get between your offensive line, you're scrambling towards the outside, whether you're moving inside or you're moving outside, right? So you're going around the tackle or you're going up the middle or something like that. 2 hands on the ball while you're moving was the note that he was given. And so something to watch now moving forward. And this is one of the reasons why I love this setup.
Yes.
Because of how close we are. We can hear everything. Like it almost feels like I wasn't supposed to hear that. You know what I mean? But like now we heard that. And then so when Spencer Rattler scrambles, does he have 2 hands on the ball? Is he taking the note? Is kind of that next thing that you're looking for. Not just can he make the play, but is he listening when he's getting the corrections or when he's getting the coaching? Running back was an interesting one for me, and this kind of gets to Rose's question about DA saying you can't make the team in the trading room. Is there really a chance that Jordan Mims ends up moving ahead of Kendre Miller? I wouldn't start to expect it,
not yet,
but I would say that like if Jordan Mims decides to, right, and is able to, if the door is cracked, he's got to kick it through, right? He's got to do the work to create the upset there. But we did see Kendre Miller out on the field at one point. He was out. He was in his jersey, no helmet or anything like that.
Hoodie over and stuff, incognito.
Right. But good to see him around the team and everything like that. Like always good to see that. And that typically at least shows some indication of progress. And so it'll be interesting to see like, maybe he's in stretch tomorrow, or maybe he's in walkthroughs tomorrow or something like that. So we'll definitely be watching for that as well. But I just wanted to give like a little bit of an update in terms of like where that was in reference to that question, because Mims right now still working right behind Alvin Kamara, right behind Jamal Williams,
that first team,
everything. And so he's getting those opportunities. He's still getting those shots. Now, if he wants to take advantage of an opportunity that may or may not be there, or if he wants to create the opportunity for himself, it's in his hands to do it while Kendre Miller's on that sideline trying to get better. Yeah.
And I think when we went down your roster preview, one of the things I said that could be a conundrum is I don't know if you put a fullback on the roster. And I got a little bit of flack, and I said, not that this offense isn't going to use it as fullback, because they are. But from a numbers perspective and an accounting perspective, you could keep 4 running backs, put your fullback on the practice squad, and then you're also running the risk of them getting poached too. But at the same time, it could be if a Jordan Mims can show his upside on special teams, he can do some things. We've seen him work in the red zone, but that is something that is going to be probably play out in the next few weeks. But he's going to have a preseason. Well, unlike last year, he's going to have a preseason to be able to prove himself too.
Yeah, this was something that I spoke with Derek Foster, New Orleans Saints running back coach, after practice, and he talked about how Jordan Mims right now is at his most comfortable because he didn't come last year. Remember, he came from the Buffalo Bills. Yep. So he was picked up by the Buffalo Bills as a UDFA, waived, and then ended up showing up here in New Orleans. So he was learning a system that was ultimately replaced in Buffalo, by the way, mid-season, and then showed up here in New Orleans with no training camp, no OTA opportunities, something like that, having to learn a new system. Now he is in here from the installment of the system all the way through. And so that was one of the things that Coach Foster kind of observed about Jordan Mims, is that the comfort level is very different this year than it was last year.
And that's big. I mean, I think it's big to be comfortable in this offense, to know that what you're being asked to do, you can see it, feel it, touch it, and then be able to go and execute it. I think that's big for him for sure. Anybody else that stood out? I mean, golly, we're already past the hour mark. I feel like we could talk about the Saints for like a whole day. Not that we're going to be like a 4-hour stream or 8-hour stream, like, we'll just leave that Scott Hansen on the NFL Red Zone stuff. Like, he can do that, but not us. And so as we wind down here, anybody else or anything else that stood out for you at training camp day 3?
We had new kick returners. Speaking of,
God, you brought up kick.
Yeah.
Blake Grupe hit all 7.
Blake Grupe hit all 7, so he's now 15 to 15 from
That's
distances
That's
between
good news.
extra point to 52 yards. So pretty good stuff there. And that was, by the way, they switched holders halfway through on him today. So the first first 3 kicks, Ross can count, I promise you. The first 3 kicks were with Headley holding, and then the last 4 kicks were with Hayball holding.
Oh, wow.
Like and so good. And he hit every single one.
And there's wind going there. Like it's not a ton, but there's California wind. I was
told that it was southwest 10 to 15 miles an hour.
Okay, so then that's actually wind.
Pretty good.
Not just a little wind. That
was pretty good. Graf said he did it licked his finger and held it up. He knew how fast it was going. So I was told southwest 10 to 15 mpHs. If anybody knows any better, please tell me. But I'm sure he just checked the weather app. But yeah, that's
yeah.
But I like the idea.
Right.
You know, get
it feels like 10.
Right.
It feels like 15.
Right.
Maybe. Yeah.
But we did see Jordan Mims now enter the returner conversation with kickoffs. We hadn't necessarily seen him in there as much.
Right.
We saw Jamal Williams. We've seen James Robinson there, but it was great to see another place where Jordan Mims does that. And of course, that is because Kendre Miller is typically in that return, like one of those return pairings, right? Yeah. You have a left returner and a right returner. Right returner makes the call. And all these other things.
I remember Jamal saying something about that.
Yeah. Yes. And so, yeah, it was cool to see Jordan Mims move up in that too. So he didn't just move up in the running back rotation, but he moved into the special teams rotation as well.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, you know, and James Robinson's another guy. I think he's starting to make some plays too. He's another one that, you know, he had a pretty decent career to start, and then kind of just fell off the wayside.
1,000-yard rusher all out of nowhere.
Yeah, we talked about him, and so he made a couple of different plays, or at least getting involved. I don't know, say like big plays, but that's good to see for sure. But you know, overall, it's another good practice, another one that we have some questions afterwards, and I think that's the biggest thing, is that I don't think we're ever going to come out of practice and be like, all right, we know the 2024 Saints.
Absolutely
right?
Absolutely not.
It's just not going to happen. So it's going to be good. I like to see I see some questions in there. People have asked about the offensive line, who stood out and stuff. I don't know that we've seen a ton of that. You know what I mean? I think more of that is going to be based off the pads. Like I can tell you, positioning looks good, and where we've seen some guys that have showed us some stuff, but I don't know that I'd say this guy just looks solid.
Yeah.
Like for me, you know, it's just like saying, well, how's Paulson and Debo doing? Well, they're not really throwing his way. I can tell you that much.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
True.
Just like Kool-Aid, it was at one point they weren't throwing his way, but you know, we're going to get more information when those pads do come on. I'd say so.
That'll be big for sure. Got a question from Tedra 2 wondering if Taysom was taking any quarterback snaps. No quarterback snaps in practice thus far. Today he spent time at fullback. Spent time with the tight ends during individual drills. Spent a little bit of time with the running backs, and then spent some time at tailback and fullback during team drills and stuff like that as well. So those are all the different places that we saw him get going. So
that was one thing. I just realized that one play, the only one thing, because this is what I was talking about, the O-line. The one play where Derek Carr had 3 Saints defenders there for a sack. Yeah. Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, and then who was Nathan Shepard. Like that was the one real negative play, I think, on the offensive line. And they just had made a swap because Lucas Patrick was starting at left guard there, and then he just put Saldivari in there. Not saying that that's related, but that was one pretty rough look for today. I think for that first team offense.
It's the opposite of what we talked about yesterday, right? To where, you know, on Thursday we were talking about how like they haven't been doing much rotating, and that's great because now everybody gets used to who's on their left shoulder, who's on their right shoulder. Then all of a sudden you rotate and you change that. That's a new challenge. It's a new challenge. You got to be able to adjust to that. So yeah, that was a big one. We were like, who got that sack? And we were like, yes. Like everybody was back there. So yeah, that was a rough one. Yeah, I'm just looking through some notes before we get out here. Bub Means, another one. He made a play today. I think so. It was a good one from Rattler. So that was good to see. More pressures from Carl Granderson. Again, I've talked about Nathan Shepard a little bit and Shaheed doing some things. I mean, you know, Mason Tipton made another pretty decent play today with Jay Haener. AT had a really nice one. He found a hole in a zone at one point on an over route. That was nice. Because that was one of those big things with him that we saw from Olave and we saw from Shaheed. Wanted to see more of from Perry is like, can you find those open spots, those soft spots in the zone? Yep. So it was great to see that. And a Headley punting day. So he had some pretty good ones. Not consistent, but you know, he had some ones where they punt from the back of the end zone and they work their way up to like the 40-yard line. And so he had a few of them that good hang time, also went out of bounds, pinned them inside the 5. You know what I mean? Yeah, he had a beautiful one. Some like really good ones. And so again, I don't know if I'd say it's the same thing with the whole Charlie Smith, you know, Blake Groupie thing. I don't know if we're saying we're totally in competition mode with the kicker spot, maybe at the punter spot, but again, more information is going to be needed. And we said this, that, you know, those other guys, they got the stronger legs, but we just need to see more consistency from the other ones. But Headley, you know, is going to be in the mix. I think he's going to be in for a pretty good year. For sure. I want to answer this question as we wrap up here, just because we talked about it a bunch, but I think it's a good thing to refresh every now and then. How does the offense look fundamentally look different than the offense than the one that was used last season? And so I'm just going to rattle off a bunch of different things here. Motion, play action, outside zone, a lot of outside zone run, a lot of spacing, tosses. We saw some sweep we saw some sweep runs as well. I would say a lot of Taysom at fullback as a lead blocker. That's been a lot of fun to watch. Motion. This is one of the things we talked about. We observed during the practice. Motion at the point of the snap, right? So somebody's in motion. While they're in motion, the ball is snapped. That player that's in motion now kind of gets this full head of steam, this momentum, and then is out there blocking, right? So you get that crash course. Crash course. I moved my S sounds. on that one. And then I would say 2 wide receiver sets, 2 tight end sets, 2 running back sets. I think are all big parts of it too. So I just want to rattle off a couple of things that are just kind of like good refreshers for like, hey, here's what looks different, about this offense.
Yeah, and go back to yesterday's episode or day 2 if you're listening on a different day. Go back to day 2. I do bookmarks on all the chapters when we talk about Landon Young and get his insight on the offense. That's a really good point to make sure that you get all that insight for sure. Yeah. So
we also read about it over at saintsi.com.
Yes,
by the way. I wrote a piece about it this morning.
Yes, Ross done all the work. Man, it's time for us to get out of here, man.
Bye.
All right. See y'all. Mic drop. But we're going to be back on Saturday. Just a couple of things. Guys, again, we appreciate all the support. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. You guys have been fantastic here for the community. We put up highlights from the day. We're trying as best as we can to give our YouTube subscribers the best, like the premium stuff. We're writing stuff, but you want to get more of the intel and some of the highlights and stuff. I'm not putting all that on Twitter. I'm giving it to you guys. So y'all just check those out, shorts or whatever the case may be. But don't forget about the meetup August 8th, Bourbon Street Bar and Grill. I talked to the owner yesterday, and again, we're going to get a flyer created, but we're expecting hopefully a good bit of turnout, and hopefully at least some of y'all come see us. I know some people have asked and said, I want to drive up to San Diego, want to do this and stuff. So if you're around, we're going to be putting all that information out, open invite for all of us to come and have some fun. We're going to do a live show and stuff. But other than that, Ross, I don't know. How do you wrap up something like that? Did you get the Kendrick count today?
It was the first Drake song today.
Oh, yeah.
There was the first Drake song today. Yeah. So that was disappointing because we're in Southern California. Like there's no space for Drake in Southern California.
I mean,
I went to a Kat and I went to a spot yesterday, and all they played were Drake songs, and I was like, "You're in Southern California, yo! This is absolute blasphemy! Like, what are we doing?" So so that's my Drake count. I didn't hear any Kendrick songs, but we did hear some more California centric songs today. To Live and Die in LA, Tupac was good, like all that. So that was good to see. So that's my music report for the day.
Dope, appreciate it. Make sure you get all the hard hitting analysis from Second and Saints, because Ross and I tell you the stuff that nobody else cares about for sure. Well, guys, that's going to do it for us on our Friday episode. On behalf of Ross Jackson, I'm John Hendricks signing out. Second and Saints. Y'all have a good one, guys.
Drive into summer with the Honda CR-V and Accord, your fun-to-drive weekend getaway vehicles. From Honda, the 2024 Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com Best Value brand. So hurry in to the Honda Summer Event. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 2.9% APR on a 2025 CR-V or 2024 Accord.
See dealer for financing details based on 2024 Consumer Choice Awards from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.